I am... This is Monkey. And I am the Hermitess. Spiritual gangsteress. But not as gangsterous as Sarah Elkhaldy, the alchemist, which is why I'm going to be following along with some of her videos. Sarah is my guide through the wacky world of quantum reality. Like literally, she started appearing in that when the student is ready, the teacher appears kind of way, where I'm going through all this stuff and have no one to turn to. Now that I think about it, Sarah was a little late. Like I could have used some of this a lot earlier. Whatever. She's here now, and she's going to help us navigate this wacky waveform reality. Today I'm going to be covering Sarah's video on jumping timelines because I mentioned it in my very first video, and I think we should just get right into the wacky stuff. I just feel better about it because I don't think people are conceptualizing spiritual perception well enough. We've got a lot of information out there about spiritual reality, but a lot of it can't help but be seen in this stereotypical way that we call woo-woo because it is unstructured. It doesn't help attach the waveform to the particle. Like it's not sticking, it's just staying in waveform, wobbly woo-woo territory. Saturn going into Pisces is going to help a lot with this because it's going to bring structure to all that is wishy-washy, oceanic spirituality, like blah, 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 blah. The moon has been in Pisces, the sun is in Pisces. It's a very Piscean time right now, and we need some structure. So let's talk about time and lines. Very Saturnian stuff. Sarah says the quantum field is a wild beast that perplexes even the world's most astute minds. This is my favorite definition of a timeline jump.
One could hardly grasp that the universe's editing software, to seamlessly splicing and pasting together the strip of film before us, is when we blink our eyes. If we are anything, even before human, we are quantum animals.
Our consciousness acts as an antenna that translates waveforms, which is the quantum field made up of pure potential, into what is known as interference patterns. I don't understand anything on that page yet. And then once more into particles that make up everything in the physical world. So basically it's waveform to interference pattern to particles. Ta-da! Quantum reality. But providing the raw materials for reality is not where the magic of waveforms stop. They also shape an infinite number of past, present, and futures since they accommodate all possibility. I believe this is what I experienced when I was so out of my mind I had to be institutionalized. I was calling it time surfing. I didn't understand whether it was what was actually going to play out or just potentials, but it felt like I was inside a computer that was generating all of the possibilities, flashes of everything I could be, so many different things. And some, if I was interested, I would go a little deeper down that reality. Like when I was first trying to figure out what it meant for me, myself, my ego, I thought stand-up comedy could be an avenue. So I was going down this imagined future of being a stand-up comedian. I've always been like, damn, if I could just be like Bill Hicks, if I had that external masculine energy, I could do this. I could tell my truth in that way. It doesn't work though. I'm way too quiet and passive and I hate the nightlife. So played with it and that was fun. Most of the other potentials for me weren't even on this earth. They're too weird to even talk about. But anything any future that I was projecting for myself here on Earth was going to be teaching how to project your future in all these other not so earthly ways, but influenced by Earth, like taking all the warmth and comfort and joy of Earth into these other dimensions. Reality is stranger than we can imagine. We cannot imagine how strange it is until we experience the strangeness of it. So you need to really have it in mind that you want to experience all of the glorious strangeness that the universe has to offer, which can be scary. So I think up until this point, our spiritual egos have really focused on keeping it grounded, keeping it in service of the ego by maintaining hierarchical spiritual structures where you've got masters and students. There's always levels and you have to be disciplined. Discipline is a tool. It's a great one to do things here on the proton plane. I don't know how relevant it is ultimately. A part of me thinks a lot of it, like the harsh discipline, the systems and the practices and all of that was toil. Like we kind of have been slaves on this planet, cranking out the means by which the future would operate. Like what I said in my last video, I said higher consciousness cannot prove itself to lower consciousness. Lower consciousness has to prove itself to higher consciousness, and that, in effect, is creating the path of higher consciousness. So all of reality is this feedback loop between the past and the future. The past is affecting the future, and the future is affecting the past, all within this very moment. And as we create everything here on Earth, we are doing it thinking we're discovering something that has always existed. But we are, in fact, inventing everything. We want to get across town in 30 minutes instead of walking 30 miles. So we, in our minds, say, I'm sick of taking care of horses. They poop everywhere. I'm going to invent something called a vehicle. It's going to be like the buggy, but it'll go on its own. No horsepower, but I'll keep the name because that sounds cool. Horsepower. So then, we just make up the means as creator beings of creating a car. We know there has to be a way. We've got an idea, and where there's a will, there's a way. So we make our damn cars. The resources just come together. And then we make planes because we know we can fly. Seems ridiculous, but we know that we can fly. Now planes are like, I don't even like them. So let's say that today I decide I am sick of all these cars and planes and their stinky fumes. I want electric vehicles to take over by year 2024. So you have to give manifestations time to develop. It has to still come through waveform to interference pattern to proton or particles or whatever. I think they're the same thing. And even before all of this spiritual stuff about manifestation and how to be a creator of your own reality started being popularized, we all were already doing that. We all came in with all of these rockets of desire that we're going to manifest. The stronger the desire and the stronger the will. Like, I believe that I helped create Uber single-handedly. I was a big mover on that one. I had bought this brand new car for myself and hated the fact that I wasn't sharing 3 out of 4 seats I love even that Sarah said in her video, if we are anything, even before human, we are quantum animals. This was a huge theme throughout what I'm referring to as my spiritual emergency. In 2019, I just started hallucinating. It was all beautiful and amazing, and it lasted for about 9 months. And it was wacky and wild too. I was institutionalized. You could very easily call it a psychotic break. I know that there's a similarity, but it was awesome. I was also diagnosed as bipolar 1, which was kind of shocking. I thought they'd come out with something like schizophrenia. But now I recognize that all of these labels of mental illness are just spirit trying to break out of the confines that we have created, the mind. We're trying to break out of the matrix. The false one versus the real one, the mother, which is our soothing spiritual reality, which is calm and cool and collected so long as it's not being held in prison and solitary confinement. The ego is not bad of itself, it's just that it's solitary confinement. So timelines. We are on a timeline, but that timeline is constantly splicing and editing as we blink our eyes. Can you really grok that? Can you really imagine that? Because if you can, you may start to perceive that. We've got the Mandela effect, which I actually had to look up yesterday. I do remember Berenstain Bears as Berenstein with an E, not an A. I don't remember about Mandela dying in prison or something because I don't do history very well. And it's also just really weird that it's called the Mandela effect after Nelson Mandela. And it's like a mandala effect too, this rippling out, literally like rippling out of all these angles, all these nodes. Was that intentional? Mandala? Anyway, life gets weird in such a beautiful way that it's not weird at all. Like these crystalline patterns descend upon your life, and you see them as synchronicity. You see them as, oh my gosh, there was chaos in that other timeline I was on, but now everything is perfectly clear. We are shifting timelines more often than not, and many anomalies are left as the artifacts of this. And you will never be able to trace or display the evidence that timelines have shifted. It always covers its tracks. As a young woman, shamed by her own femininity in a world of worship of intelligence and the linear, I was really reticent to get into spirituality, at least the packaging and the woo-woo. I preferred to find it in pop culture things, in works of art. So one of the earliest influences for me was the book The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. That book showcases really well how these time splits occur, though even clunkier in the novel because the main character is having nightly dreams which launch everyone into a different timeline. So he goes to sleep, dreams this dream, and wakes up in a different timeline. The universe is much more nuanced and detail oriented. So the changes that are made will never make it so that your reality is discontinuous. There's no clear chop. There's no, forget this movie, we're doing this one instead. It's always going to be fluid, gentle, seamless, and again, you will never be able to prove that yesterday you were in this reality and today you're in another one. You're just going to get shipped off to a mental hospital and come out and everything's going to be like nothing ever happened. And that's a really terrible feeling. So if you've ever had one of these experiences, I am here to say, cheers. You're not crazy. Reality is supposed to gaslight us a little bit because we are in a collective reality, a shared reality, and we do all have to reach a consensus on it. So it's as though in the quantum field, we're all working out our desires and contracts and directing, and then we come into this form and it plays out in a way that benefits the most people the most. So the cool thing about viewing reality this way and experiencing it as this way is that you're released from all the moral narcissism of the age of Pisces. Pisces is the most spiritual sign. It's at the end of the zodiac, so it's like we've completed the zodiac wheel, time to float off into heaven. Except we've used heaven as a weapon. We're also dealing with massive substance abuse, which is the underbelly of Pisces. Saturn has been in Aquarius, and it is the Aquarian age. There doesn't have to be a set date for when this began, because we made it up. We're making it all up. But enough minds, enough sovereign minds have put enough loving energy into the zodiac and into these concepts of the Piscean age and the Aquarian age that this is what we're rolling with. I think the Aquarian age began with the song from the fifth dimension that everybody knows. That's it for me, because sometimes the universe is obvious. Sometimes the universe is sick of subtlety. Nobody ever fucking sees it. So it just pops you on the nose. And then you don't see it because it's too obvious. We are such idiots. Adorable idiots. But idiots nonetheless. Enjoy it. It's good to be dumb. Why do you think we worship dogs? I'm kind of going off the rails this morning. This is my second cup of coffee, and I woke up with the song "This Is How We Do It" in my head, which really set the tone. Feels so good in my hood this morning. And I don't know how to stay on task, Sarah. So let's say we choose to venture down a path of awakening our consciousness, which needs to be what you're here to do. I'm not going to be very entertaining. I am light entertainment. We are getting to brass tacks here, awakening our consciousness. So we're deciding to awaken our consciousness. The quantum field is now organizing a new trajectory with the full unfoldment of that choice for me and for you, containing all the possibilities and all the probabilities. And the more conscious we become, the more we reinforce the timelines that reflect that choice. You know what that means deep inside. We don't have to define consciousness. It's a web, it's strings, it connects us all. It's mycelial, like mushroom string, like webbing. It's sticky. If you reach a certain level of consciousness, you can feel it. And then it becomes indistinguishable from electricity. And you can like grab things with the webs instead of with your physical being. And that's what happened to me, and I've been trying to make sense of it ever since. So, in making this choice to become more conscious, we have established a feedback loop between us and all of the potential future versions of ourselves that we are aligning with. And through this feedback loop, the potential future versions of ourself sends us the resources we would require in order to actualize them. So you've been riding around in a horse and buggy for a while now. You want a car like the buggy, but without a pooping animal parading in front of you. And you also don't love the idea that this animal is enslaved to you. So the universe is like, I hid all these bones under the ground. If you mix them like this and you make a little thing like that, you can magic. Here's a car. It's pretty practical magic, here in the third dimension, at least. But it comes from our impractical source, that is pure imagination. It also operates outside of time, so it could even go back and plant the necessary ingredients in the ground that cause fossil fuels to be born. And maybe it even wanted smog and filthy cities. Maybe that's part of the whole project we're doing. Maybe the whole thing doesn't have to be paradise all the time. Maybe we want to be stuck in the mud before we become lotuses. Anyway, there's a little ant here that wants to be a star. Powerful manifester ant-man. Do your dance. Do something. Tightrope skills? Nope. Okay. Awesome catwalk. Sarah talks a lot about fate versus free will in this video. And that's something that's become very critical for me because I have recognized my own patterns in life which have not taken me where I want to go. And I have had to make the mental shift, and it is quite radical for me, from fate to free will. And the universe has forever. So the universe is in no rush to make you make your change. You don't ever have to do anything that you're uncomfortable with. And the universe will provide whatever you need to feel comfortable. In my case, I get nervous and just go fall asleep instead of doing the things that I know I need to be doing a lot of the time. But I keep trying, and that's the important thing. Sarah says that depending on how much of our free will we are using, we either make predictable and established choices that we hope lead to a future we have envisioned, or we can implement more chance and uncertainty that would open up the timelines containing entirely different potential futures. If we are content on our current trajectory, the less likely we are to make radical choices that would lead to radical changes in direction. A lot of people who can't conceptualize spirituality create a lid out of contentment. They reach a point in their life where they feel content, and they think this is the crown of achievement. I am content. I don't need to shoot any rockets of desire. I don't need to expand. I don't need to fight death. I don't need to love it either. I'm just content. But if you will notice, the lid on that bottom spiral is just the beginning of the upward spiral. But because contentment is the foundation for the upward spiral, nothing that you do to spiritually realize and to become conscious has to be uncomfortable. But fate is the lesson we come into this life wanting to experience. We're learning stuff. And we don't ever have to shame anybody or ourselves for anything that we did not previously know. After the lessons of fate are learned, Sarah says that free will is the journey of how those lessons are lived. When we master the lessons of fate, we become masters of our destiny. You can tell a story that makes you feel good about what is taking place. Always. It doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to be ultimately real. But honestly, if enough people agree to it, it will be what's real. Because that's what having a collective consciousness is. It's an agreement that this is reality and not that. Or this is the agreed upon story. Here are all these other cool things that could have happened. You never have to look at anything in a negative way. I love this example that Sarah gives here. She says, if you want to imagine how much our environment affects the input to our feedback loop, let's say that the media for 6 months straight, on repeat, was blasting us with this message that celestial bodies were coming towards Earth at a rate that would accelerate our DNA. We would all, in 6 months, be flying around like Superman. Why? Because we are constantly getting from our environment that impact to create that output of our feedback loop. That was a little wordy, or just feedback loopy. Basically, what that means is the more your environment is showing you something and you're believing it, this is co-creation. Just like the horse and buggy. Most people not into it. Some people still enjoying that. It's okay. We can all live here. This is the fourth dimension, the most variegated plane of existence. You get all the choices, all the variety, all the analysis paralysis here in the cosmic buffet of the fourth dimension. And I guess the third dimension is more of a negative bias. The fifth dimension is more of a positive bias in terms of experience. Be wherever you want to be. It is all your choice. So a few more technical points, which I am failing at hardcore this morning. Sarah mentions something called Fourier's transform. I still don't understand it, but it's a physics formula explaining how we pulsate into and out of this reality every 10 cycles per second. And this is how timelines are splitting all the time. They split no different than when a cell divides. Well, if physics confirms it, she emphasizes that only conscious observers have the power to impact the field. You have to be aware of your power. She touches on this whole conspiratorial New World Order thing. And she says, don't be intimidated by that term, New World Order. Instead, know that you can also make a New World Order. All we're doing here is turning chaos, which is the quantum field of pure potential, into the manifest, which is order. We do this by taking action that reflects the timeline we would like to shift to. The thought is the most powerful if you're actually believing it and if your heart is actually connected through desire to the thought. But you won't begin to see manifestation if you're not letting that thought and that heart and that desire spill over into your action. There is a huge danger of stagnation with spirituality, because you can start having these experiences like I have, and then just sit in your little desire pool. And I think this is honestly where a lot of people stop with Buddhism and reaching enlightenment. They just sit in lotus pose and spin in infinity. And that might be a perfectly fine resting point. I really don't know. But for me, it seems a little lacking, and it seems a little wasteful of material reality, which is beautiful. I honestly compare the stopping right there at sitting like a doped up ape for the rest of your life because you've reached enlightenment. That's the same thing as just 3D contentment, where we're just like, no, I'm good. I'm definitely lying to myself, but I'm totally good. We want more. We are always going to want more. We have to make peace with that, or it's going to trample us. We'll be this content little wildebeest wandering around the field, and the rest of the wildebeests are going to come mow us down. We cannot write off desire. The universe runs on desire. We have to integrate it. We have to give it order. We have so many beautiful systems to help us deal with desire in a constructive, beautiful way. And closing the book on the Pisces age means closing all of those old ideas of temptation and the devil, the notion that having wants, not just needs, but want, is bad. None of this stuff matters if we don't have a desire that we want to make manifest. We don't need any of this quantum crap. We don't need a stage that is the third dimension or the fourth dimension. We don't need dimensions. We don't need anything if there's nothing that wants to happen. But we are a happening that wants to keep happening. And we want it to happen nicely. We want it to feel good. That's all. Period. You can end there. That's life. That's spirituality. That's terrestriality. That's everything that is happening all over the world and in the universe. I'm a happening, and I want to keep happening, and I want it to be good. So, I don't know what that has to do with timelines, but it's relevant. Everything is relevant because everything is connected. I obviously really need the influence of Saturn for my Pisces life. I hope it's getting out of Aquarius soon, or that it's already done. But Venus is in Aries. I think that's helping. And after that, the sun will be in Aries. And we'll get this happening. Out of battery life again. That's a great indicator for me. It really, really helps me know when to stop. I love it. Peace out.